I was halfway through my presentation when the CEO cut me off. His hand went up like a stop sign, and the entire boardroom went silent. He leaned back in his chair, a smirk spreading across his face. "This isn't strategy, Daniel. This is theory." A few executives chuckled. I felt my face getting hot. He continued, louder now. "Theory is what you learn in business school. Strategy is what you build when you've actually run companies." He gestured around the room. "Stick to execution. Leave the big thinking to people who know what they're doing." Every single person was staring at me. Some looked uncomfortable. Others nodded in agreement. I stood there holding my presentation clicker, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. I didn't argue, didn't defend myself, just nodded slowly. "Understood," I said quietly, and sat down. The meeting moved on like nothing happened. But inside, something had shifted. Because what the CEO didn't know was that I'd already tested this strategy. Quietly. On my own time. And it worked. As people filed out of the boardroom, the CEO walked past me. He actually stopped and put his hand on my shoulder. Like we were old friends. "Don't worry about it," he said with a smile. "You'll get there someday. Just takes time and experience." Like I was fresh out of college. Like I hadn't been working here for 5 years. Like I didn't build half the systems this company ran on. I forced myself to smile back. "Thanks for the feedback." He walked away, already talking to someone else. Already forgetting about me. But I wasn't going to forget this moment. Because something clicked in my brain right then. This wasn't constructive criticism. This wasn't him trying to help me grow. This was deliberate. This was him keeping me in a box. Theory versus strategy. Execution versus big thinking. He was drawing lines that didn't need to exist. And I started wondering why. My name is Corwin Daniel. I'm a mid-level strategist at a marketing firm. Not the kind of job that gets you on magazine covers, but important enough. I'd been there for 5 years. Started right after college, worked my way up from analyst to strategist. I was the person leadership called when campaigns were failing. When data was messy. When someone needed to fix a problem quietly. I wasn't flashy. Didn't play politics. Didn't take credit for things unnecessarily. I just worked. Consistently. Reliably. And apparently, that made me invisible. People knew my work, but they didn't know me. My ideas got used, but my name didn't get mentioned. I was the engine running in the background while other people sat in the driver's seat. For a long time, I thought that was fine. I thought doing good work was enough. That eventually, people would notice. That merit mattered. But standing in that boardroom, getting publicly dismissed, I realized something uncomfortable. Being good at your job isn't enough if no one wants to see it. The CEO's dismissal wasn't new. It was just the loudest example of a pattern I'd been seeing for months. Every time I pushed something forward-thinking, it got shot down. Too risky. Too complicated. Not aligned with our brand. But then, like clockwork, 6 months later someone else would present a watered-down version of the same idea. And suddenly it was brilliant. Innovative. Exactly what we needed. 3 months ago, I'd suggested reorganizing our customer data to identify high-value segments. Dismissed as overthinking it. Last week, the VP of Marketing presented a new revolutionary approach to customer segmentation. Got a standing ovation. Same concept. Same framework. Just presented by someone with a bigger title. I wasn't being ignored. I was being mined. They were taking my ideas, waiting until I stopped pushing them, then repackaging them as their own. And the CEO was at the center of it all. I started paying closer attention. Not paranoid attention. Just methodical observation. In leadership presentations, I began noticing specific phrases. Language I'd used in emails or meetings. Concepts I'd pitched in strategy sessions. At first, I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe these were just common ideas that multiple people had independently. Maybe I was seeing patterns that weren't really there. So I started checking timestamps. Going back through my emails and documents. Comparing dates. And the pattern became undeniable. I'd pitch something in March. Get told no. Then in September, almost the exact same thing would appear in a leadership deck. Different words, but same structure, same logic, same conclusion. It had happened 4 times in the past year alone. The ideas weren't getting rejected because they were wrong. They were getting delayed until someone else could claim them. That's when the real realization hit me, like ice water down my back. They weren't rejecting my ideas because they didn't work. They were rejecting them because I was the one saying them. The CEO wasn't protecting the company from bad strategy. He was protecting his own position. If my ideas succeeded while attached to my name, it raised uncomfortable questions. Why was a mid-level strategist seeing things leadership missed? Why was someone without experience running companies proposing better solutions? So instead, they waited, let the idea fade from recent memory, then brought it back under someone else's name. Someone with the right title, the right credentials, the right relationships. The CEO wasn't just dismissing me, he was systematically repositioning my work as his leadership's work. And he'd been doing it for over a year. I sat at my desk that night, staring at my computer screen, feeling angry and helpless and stupid for not seeing it sooner. I had 2 clear options in front of me. Option 1, push harder, make noise, demand credit, go to HR, document everything and fight for recognition. That path led nowhere good. I'd seen people try it. They got labeled as difficult, not team players, eventually pushed out or stuck in the same role forever. Option 2, stop fighting. Stop trying to convince people who didn't want to be convinced. And instead, just prove it. No arguments. No presentations. No trying to win over the CEO in meetings. Just cold, undeniable results. So I made a decision. I stopped pushing my ideas in meetings. Stopped trying to get buy-in from leadership. Stopped expecting anything to change through normal channels. And I started preparing something they couldn't ignore. Something that would speak louder than any presentation ever could. I took the exact strategy the CEO had mocked. The one he'd called theory. The one he dismissed in front of the entire executive team. And I quietly applied it to the lowest priority account we had. It was a small client. Barely breaking even. Nobody important paid attention to it. Perfect for testing. I didn't ask permission. Didn't make announcements. Just implemented the framework during my normal work. Small changes week by week. Nothing flashy. Nothing that would draw attention. Customer segmentation based on behavior, not demographics. Targeted messaging for each segment. Personalized timing. Data-driven optimization at every step. All the things the CEO had called overthinking it. I documented everything. Every change, every metric, every result. Created a private folder on my personal drive. Time-stamped screenshots. Detailed notes. And then I watched the numbers. Week by week, something started happening. The metrics started climbing. The results came faster than I expected. Conversion rates doubled in the first month. Then kept climbing. Customer retention improved by 30%. Engagement metrics went up across every channel. Most importantly, costs dropped. We were spending less and getting better results. The exact outcome I'd predicted in my original presentation. But here's the thing, nobody noticed. Because nobody was watching this account. It was too small. Too insignificant. Leadership had bigger priorities. Which meant I had complete freedom to prove my point without interference. Every week, I updated my documentation. Added new data points. Compared performance before and after implementation. Built an airtight case. Not to present to anyone. Not yet. Just to have. Just to know. The strategy wasn't theory. It was proven, measurable success. And I was the only person who knew about it. I kept working on other projects. Kept my head down in meetings. Stayed invisible. But now, invisibility was my advantage. Not my weakness. Then something unexpected happened. Something I couldn't have planned if I tried. One of our biggest competitors launched a new campaign. Different branding, different messaging, but the underlying framework was eerily familiar. Behavioral segmentation. personalized timing, data-driven optimization. The exact same approach I designed. The exact same structure the CEO had mocked. And it started destroying us in the market. Their engagement rates were off the charts. They were pulling clients we'd considered locked in. Industry publications were writing about their innovative approach. It was my strategy, being executed by someone else. Successfully, publicly, and now everyone was watching. Leadership noticed immediately. How could they not? We were losing market share in real time. The CEO called emergency meetings, demanded explanations, wanted to know why we weren't keeping up. I sat in those meetings, saying nothing, watching him scramble. Because now it wasn't just me saying the strategy worked. The entire market was proving it. The CEO's response was predictable. In a company-wide meeting, he addressed the competitor's campaign directly. "They're using flashy tactics," he said dismissively. "Short-term thinking. It won't last." He sounded confident, certain, like he had inside knowledge we didn't. But I could hear the doubt underneath. The defensiveness. Someone asked if we should consider a similar approach. The CEO shut it down immediately. "We don't chase trends. We build lasting strategies." I almost laughed. The same man who'd stolen my ideas for a year was now rejecting them when a competitor proved they worked. Pride. That's what this was. He couldn't admit he'd been wrong. Couldn't acknowledge that the theory he'd mocked was actually working. So he doubled down on dismissing it. I stayed quiet during that meeting. Nodded along. Looked concerned in all the right places. But inside, I was calm. Because I knew something he didn't. This wasn't going to blow over. Over the next 6 weeks, our numbers started slipping. Not catastrophically. Just steadily, unavoidably downward. Key accounts that had been stable for years suddenly plateaued. Clients started asking questions we couldn't answer well. Why weren't we adapting? Why weren't we innovating? The competitor kept gaining ground. Their approach was working, and everyone could see it. Leadership started feeling real pressure. Board meetings got tense. Performance reviews turned critical. But still, nobody connected the dots. Nobody remembered the presentation I'd given 4 months ago. The one where I'd proposed exactly what our competitor was now dominating with. Why would they? The CEO had dismissed it so completely that it barely registered as a real suggestion. It was just Daniel's theory. Not worth remembering. Meanwhile, my small test account kept performing beautifully. Numbers climbing month after month. But I didn't mention it. Didn't bring it up. Just watched and waited. In a strategy meeting 2 months after the competitor's launch, something shifted slightly. One of the senior managers cautiously suggested we explore new approaches. Maybe try something different. Test fresh ideas. It was the closest anyone had come to admitting we needed to change. The CEO's reaction was immediate and harsh. "We don't panic and chase every shiny new thing. That's not who we are." I recognized the framework being suggested. It was basically my original pitch, just phrased more carefully, more politically, and watching it get rejected again, I realized something. The CEO wasn't going to change his mind because someone suggested it. He needed to save face. Needed it to look like his idea. Which meant I had to wait. Had to let things get bad enough that changing course looked like leadership, not admission of failure. So I waited. And things got worse. Then the moment I'd been anticipating finally arrived. Our largest client flagged declining performance. They'd been with us for 8 years. Spent millions annually. And now they were formally reviewing their contract. The email from their VP was polite but firm. They'd noticed our competitor's innovative approach. They wanted to know why we weren't evolving similarly. Panic crept through leadership. This wasn't just metrics anymore. This was real money, real relationships. Suddenly, new ideas didn't sound so dangerous. An emergency meeting was called. All senior staff. The CEO looked tired, stressed. "We need to get creative," he said. Words I'd never heard from him before. Think outside our normal framework. People started throwing out suggestions. Most of them were variations of things that had already failed. I stayed quiet, took notes, waited, because I knew what was coming next. Someone would remember. Someone would make the connection. And when they did, I needed to be ready. After the meeting, a senior manager named Thomas pulled me aside in the hallway. He looked uncomfortable, like he was about to ask something awkward. Daniel, didn't you pitch something similar a few months back? Some kind of segmentation approach. I didn't oversell it. Didn't sound eager. Just matter of fact. Yeah, I tested a framework. Different approach to customer data. Tested it? Like, actually implemented. On the Morrison account. Seemed like a good fit for experimenting. His eyes widened. The Morrison account? That's been performing really well lately. Has it? I said casually. I haven't looked at the numbers recently. Which was a complete lie. I looked at those numbers every single day. Can you show me what you did? I paused. Let him think I was considering it. Sure. I can pull together the data. 20 minutes later, we were in a conference room. Just the two of us. And I showed him everything. Thomas sat there staring at my screen. At the before and after metrics. At the timeline. At the documented results. Conversion rates doubled. Retention up 30%. Costs down 20%. All from implementing the exact strategy the CEO had called theory for months earlier. This is incredible, Thomas said quietly. Does anyone else know about this? You're the first person who's asked. He looked at me. Really looked at me. Like he was seeing something he'd missed before. Can I share this with the executive team? I kept my face neutral. If you think it's relevant. That data made its way upward. Not from me. From Thomas. A senior manager with credibility. With relationships. Exactly as I'd planned. Suddenly, leadership had a problem they couldn't ignore. The theory worked. And there was proof. Undeniable, measurable proof. Within a week, new presentations started appearing. New strategy decks. New language. But the structure was familiar. Very familiar. Behavioral segmentation. Personalized engagement. Data-driven optimization. My exact framework. Just reworded. Repackaged. Repositioned. And not a single mention of my name. The presentations went to the executive team. To the board. They talked about new directions and innovative thinking. I watched it happen in real time. My work being absorbed into the company's strategy. Becoming leadership's idea. Thomas at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. He knew where it came from. But he didn't say anything publicly. Nobody did. Because that's not how these things work. Ideas don't have owners in corporate settings. They have presenters. And the presenters get the credit. I could have gotten angry. Could have demanded recognition. But I didn't. Because this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. They rolled out what they called a new strategic initiative. Company-wide announcement. Big presentation. It was my strategy. Slightly modified to look original. But fundamentally, completely mine. And it worked exactly like I knew it would. Client engagement improved within weeks. Conversion rates went up. The numbers that had been slipping suddenly stabilized and started climbing. Clients who'd been asking questions were suddenly satisfied. The major client who'd threatened to leave renewed their contract. Revenue ticked upward. Performance metrics improved across the board. The CEO presented the quarterly results with pride. Talked about bold new thinking and adaptive leadership. He took full credit. Stood on stage and described the strategy like he'd invented it himself. I sat in the audience, watching, listening, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Because he'd just made a huge mistake. He'd put his name on something that wasn't his. Something that could be traced. Something that could be proven. A few weeks later, I saw it. The thing that changed everything. An internal presentation circulating through leadership. Authored by the CEO himself. Titled Strategic Evolution, a New Framework. I opened it. And there it was. My exact framework. Not just similar. Not just inspired by. Exact. The same segmentation model. The same customer journey maps. Even my specific phrasing in several places. He hadn't just taken the idea. He'd copied my actual work. I sat at my desk, staring at that document, and something inside me settled. Became calm. Focused. No more waiting. No more patience. He'd crossed a line. And now I had everything I needed. I saved that presentation. Added it to my folder of documentation. Next to my original pitch. Next to my implementation timeline. Next to my performance data. A complete, undeniable timeline of theft. And I was done playing along. The shift happened in a client meeting 2 weeks later. The same major client who'd threatened to leave. We were presenting our new approach. The CEO was leading, explaining the framework with practice confidence. The client's VP listened politely, nodded in the right places. Then she said something that made the entire room freeze. "This is great. Honestly, it feels like what Daniel was saying months ago when we had concerns." Complete silence. The CEO's smile tightened. Daniel's been a valuable part of developing this direction. "Developing," she said. "I thought he pitched this back in the spring, before we flagged issues." For the first time in months, my name was publicly attached to the work. The CEO tried to redirect. Strategy is always collaborative. Many people contributed. But the damage was done. The client remembered, had made the connection, and now everyone in the room was looking at me differently. 3 days later, HR scheduled a meeting with me. They called it a casual check-in. But I knew what it really was. Leadership wanted clarity, wanted to understand the timeline, wanted to figure out what I knew and what I might say. The HR director was professional, careful with her words. "We're just trying to understand the evolution of our recent strategic shift. Can you walk me through your involvement?" They wanted me to downplay it, to play along, to accept my small role and move on. Instead, I asked a question. "Do you want the polite version or the documented version?" She blinked. "Documented. I have records, dates, emails, performance data, a complete timeline of when I proposed the strategy, when it was rejected, and when it was re-implemented under different authorship." Her expression changed, became more serious. "I see. Can you share that documentation?" I didn't get emotional, didn't accuse anyone of anything dramatic, just showed them the facts. My original presentation from March, time-stamped, with the CEO's rejection notes. My implementation on the Morrison account in April, with weekly performance tracking. The competitor's launch in June using the same framework. The CEO's dismissal of their approach. Our declining numbers through July and August. Thomas's inquiry in September. The new strategic initiative in October. The CEO's presentation in November, using my exact language. Every single piece was documented, dated, provable. I laid it all out chronologically. Let the timeline speak for itself. The HR director took notes, asked clarifying questions, stayed professional, but I could see it in her eyes. She understood what she was looking at. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was systematic credit theft. "Thank you for this information," she said carefully. "We'll need to review it with leadership." The next few weeks were strange, quiet but tense. The CEO stopped mentioning the new strategy in public forums. His presentations got more general, less specific. Leadership started distancing themselves from the initiative. Not abandoning it, it was working too well for that. Just being less vocal about who created it. Credit conversations started happening behind closed doors. I wasn't included, but I heard things. Saw the shifts. Thomas got promoted. Given more responsibility over strategic implementation. The CEO announced he was delegating more to senior leadership, focusing on bigger picture items. Nothing dramatic happened. No public confrontation. No formal apology. Just slow, quiet repositioning. The corporate version of erasing fingerprints. But I noticed something else too. Recruiters started reaching out. Other companies. Better positions. Word was spreading. Not loudly, just through certain channels. People who knew what really happened. Who understood what I'd built. 2 months later, there was a final strategy presentation. The CEO presenting to the board. Big moment. High stakes. This time, I was invited to attend. To sit in the room. The CEO went through his slides. Talked about our evolution and strategic adaptation. Same room where he'd mocked me. Same screen. Same setup. But this time was different. Near the end of his presentation, he paused. Looked directly at me. I want to acknowledge the collaborative effort that made this possible. Daniel's early research was valuable in shaping our direction. Early research. Shaping our direction. Not Daniel created this strategy. Not we rejected his approach and later realized our mistake. Just enough acknowledgement to seem gracious. Not enough to actually share credit. The board members nodded. A few looked at me. Someone smiled. I looked straight at the CEO and said something I'd been holding back for months. Funny. I remember you calling this theory, not strategy. The room went completely silent. 3 months after that meeting, I left. New company. Senior role. Full control over strategy. I implemented the same framework I developed. Openly. Successfully. With my name attached. The results were even better than before. Because now I had resources. Support. Authority. Meanwhile, my old company struggled to maintain what I'd built. They had the system, but they didn't really understand it. Couldn't evolve it. Couldn't fix it when things broke. Within 6 months, their performance started slipping again. Key people left. The CEO got replaced. The revolutionary strategy faded back to normal results. Because here's what I learned. Ideas don't get rejected because they're wrong. They get rejected because of who says them. The same concept can be brilliant or foolish depending on the title of the person presenting it. So the lesson isn't to have better ideas. It's to build undeniable proof. Make yourself impossible to ignore. And when you've proven your value beyond question, choose who gets to benefit from it. Choose carefully.